Welcome to Symbols and Synchronicity, the place where we remember the ancient whispers that the modern world has tried to silence. We are all gardeners in a landscape of time, but many of us have found ourselves walking the same worn path, day after day, year after year. We wake up in a cycle of 7 days of labor, 7 days of agreements we did not sign, a repeating loop that feels less like a life and more like a cage. You feel it in the exhaustion of your bones, that sense that you are running a race on a track that never ends. But what if I told you there is a doorway hidden in plain sight? What if the ancients left us a geometric key designed specifically to help you step outside the loop, to move beyond the control, to become the master of your own destiny? Today, we are looking at a symbol so rare and so potent it was once reserved for kings who stood outside the reach of time. It is called the Seal of Melchizedek. It is the geometry of the 8th day, a frequency that exists beyond the reach of power structures, beyond the reach of your past mistakes, and beyond the 7-day grind of the world. In this video, we're going to show you how this old star can create a new you. We are going to decode the Timeless King, who had no beginning and no end, and we will uncover why this specific 8-pointed seal is appearing in your life right now as an invitation to a great reset. By the end of this exploration, you will understand how to embody this energy, to withdraw your consent from the 7-day dream, and finally step into the sovereignty of your own spirit. The wheel is turning, but you are about to learn how to step off. Look closely at the geometry of this star, and you will see it is built from the most stable foundation of our physical world, the square. One square sits firmly, representing the 4 directions of the wind, the 4 seasons of the earth, and the 4 walls of the house you live in. It is the symbol of everything we can touch, see, and measure. It is the container of our daily reality. Now, imagine a second square, identical to the first, but turned 45 degrees. When these 2 shapes interlock, they create an 8-pointed star. This is not a random alignment. In the language of the ancients, this intersection represents the moment when the physical world is kissed by the eternal. Notice the center where the squares overlap. They form an octagon. In the architecture of sacred spaces, the octagon is the bridge. It is the transitional shape that allows a square base to support a circular dome. It is the precise point where the heavy, predictable laws of the earth begin to curve into the infinite sky. This star is a map of a doorway. The points do not just face outward, they pull your gaze toward that central 8-sided heart. To look upon this geometry is to witness the 8th day in visual form. While the 7-day week is represented by the rigid, repeating corners of a single square, this star introduces a second layer of rhythm. It suggests that there is a second world sitting right on top of this one. A world that is not bound by the same walls, the same debts, or the same gravity. It is the visual proof that the exit you are looking for is not found by running away, but by shifting your perspective until the hidden points of your life finally come into view. To understand the power of this star, we have to look at the man whose name it carries. History is often a heavy blanket of dates and lineages, but Melchizedek is a figure who simply steps out from between the pages of time. He appears in the ancient texts of Genesis not as a man born of a mother and father, but as a presence. He is called the King of Peace and the King of Righteousness, a being described as having no beginning of days and no end of life. He exists in a state of perpetual priesthood, an existence that breathes entirely within the timeless expanse of the present. When we find this symbol carved into the stone of ancient civilizations, we are looking at the footprint of someone who refused to be defined by the dream of the world. In the 6th century Basilica of San Vitale in Italy, there is a mosaic that has survived the rise and fall of empires. It depicts Melchizedek standing at an altar, and draped over that altar is a cloth marked with these very 8-pointed stars. The ancients were signaling to us that this geometry belongs to the one who is not captured by mortal rules. This isn't a symbol of a religion. It is a symbol of awakening, empowerment, and true freedom. It marks those who have realized that the history we are taught is often just a collection of shared illusions. Melchizedek represents the part of you that was never born and can never die, the part of you that remembers the world before the loop was created. But why was this king, and this seal, kept in the shadows for so long? Why is it only resurfacing now, in this moment of your life? The answers lie in the math of the universe itself, in the friction between the number 7 and the number 8. As we move forward, we're going to look at the numerical prison we've been living in, and how this star provides the exact frequency needed to finally break the bars. In our world, the number 7 is the ruler of all things visible. It is the number of completion in the garden of the physical. We see it in the 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 notes of the musical scale, and the 7 days that govern the rhythm of our work and our rest. This is a beautiful symmetry, but for many it has become a closed circle. We have agreed to live within this week-long loop, believing that when Sunday ends and Monday begins, we have finished something, when in truth, we are simply walking the circumference of a wheel. This is the numerical prison of the 7, a cycle of constant doing, constant effort, and constant returning to the same point of exhaustion. But the Seal of Melchizedek introduces the number 8. In the ancient tradition, 8 is the number of the Great Reset. If 7 is the completion of the old world, 8 is the first breath of the new one. It is the 8th day, a frequency that does not follow the 7th, but rather sits above it, looking down. When you add that 8th point to the geometry of your life, you are no longer just a creature of habit. You are acknowledging a space that the world's clocks cannot measure. The 7 days belong to the dream of the planet, the stories told to you by your ancestors, your boss, and your fears. The 8th day belongs only to you. It is the frequency of transcendence, the moment the seed finally breaks through the soil to see the sun for the first time. By focusing on this 8-pointed star, you are training your spirit to recognize the exit. You are learning that the exhaustion you feel is not because you are failing the cycle, but because you have outgrown it. You are ready to move from the repetition of the 7 to the resonance of the 8. As we go deeper, we will see how this shift in numbers is actually a shift in power, a way to finally withdraw your energy from the structures that seek to keep you spinning in place. The structures of our world are built upon the predictable nature of the loop. Every institution, every marketplace, and every social agreement thrives when you remain within the boundaries of the 7-day cycle. They require your energy to be consistent, your time to be measurable, and your attention to be fixed on the horizon of the next coming Monday. This is the domesticating force of the modern dream. It whispers that your value is tied to your productivity within the circle, and it rewards you for staying exactly where you are expected to be. In this arrangement, you are a citizen of the clock, and your spirit is the fuel that keeps the machinery turning. But to embody the Seal of Melchizedek is to declare yourself a sovereign. Sovereignty is not a rebellion against the world. It is an act of remembering your original nature. When you step into the frequency of the 8th day, you are withdrawing your consent from the belief that you are a resource to be managed. The power structures cannot comprehend the number 8 because it is a prime movement of freedom. It is the wild growth of the woods that refuses to follow the straight lines of a paved road. By aligning yourself with this ancient geometry, you are reclaiming the authority to define your own reality. You are realizing that the agreements you have made with a frantic, exhausted society are not laws of nature. They are merely stories. The sovereign individual looks at the interlocking squares of the seal and recognizes that while one square may represent their duties to the earth and their community, the other square represents their unshakable connection to the infinite. You begin to walk through the world with a different stride, no longer asking for permission to exist outside the lines. You are no longer a subject of the loop. You are the master of the center. Living the energy of the 8th day begins with a quiet, internal migration. We often think that to change our lives, we must tear down the structures around us, but the Seal of Melchizedek teaches us that the shift happens in the way we hold our attention. You begin by creating a sanctuary of time that the 7-day world cannot touch. This is the practice of the still point. Even in the heart of a frantic afternoon, you can visualize the interlocking squares of the seal within your own chest, pulling your breath into that central octagon where the noise of the world falls away. In that space, you are not a worker, a consumer, or a name on a ledger. You are a living spirit, breathing in reciprocity with the original creation. To embody this symbol, you must also look at the agreements you keep with your own exhaustion. Every time you say, "I don't have enough time," or "I am trapped by my schedule," you are feeding the loop. The 8th day practitioner changes the story. You begin to treat your time as a sacred gift rather than a diminishing currency. You choose to do one thing every day that has no purpose other than to honor your own sovereignty. A walk in the woods without a destination, a moment of silence without a goal, a creative act that will never be sold. These are the small, persistent cracks in the wall of the 7-day prison. You can also use the physical geometry of the star as a tool for neural realignment. Placing this symbol in your home or holding it in your mind's eye acts as a visual no to the chaos. It serves as a reminder that you are anchored in a reality that predates the clock. When the world tries to pull you into a familiar argument or a recurring fear, you look at the 8 points and remember your rank. You breathe into the 8th day, recognizing that while your feet must walk the soil of the four-cornered earth, your heart is governed by the Timeless King. You are learning to move through the world with the grace of a guest who knows where the exit is, remaining fully present but never truly captured. To break a loop, you must first have the courage to name it. We all have these repeating tracks in our lives. The relationship that always ends in the same shadow, the financial fear that returns every harvest, or the habit that promises a new beginning but delivers an old ending. These are the karmic loops of the 7-day world. They persist because we continue to offer them our attention, feeding the same old agreements with the energy of our belief. We think we are fighting a new battle, but we are simply spinning on the same spoke of the wheel. Practical manifestation through the Seal of Melchizedek is the act of placing the 8th point exactly where the circle usually closes. When you feel a familiar pattern beginning to pull at you, visualize the seal. See the 2 interlocking squares and realize that the conflict you are feeling exists only in the first square, the square of the material and the emotional. By breathing into the 2nd square, the one turned toward the infinite, you create a distance. You are no longer in the problem. You are the observer of the pattern. This distance is where your power lives. It is the moment you stop being the character in a tragic story and become the author holding the pen. As you focus on this geometry, ask yourself, which agreement am I breaking today? Perhaps it is the agreement that you must be stressed to be successful, or the agreement that you are unworthy of peace. Use the 8 points of the star to anchor a new intention. Imagine each point as a pillar of your new reality: sovereignty, reciprocity, silence, and truth. When you stand in the center of the seal, the old loops lose their grip because they no longer recognize you. You have changed your frequency. You are no longer a match for the old drama. This is how the 8th day moves from a beautiful concept into a lived reality. It is the quiet, steady work of choosing the star over the wheel, every single time. We have traveled from the rigid corners of the 7-day week into the expansive perspective of the 8th day. You now carry the knowledge of the Seal of Melchizedek, not as a historical curiosity, but as a living map for your own liberation. The loop of the world will continue to spin, the clocks will continue to strike the hours, and the dream of the planet will continue to demand your participation. But you have seen the 2nd square. You have glimpsed the geometry that sits beyond the control of mortal rules. From this moment on, every time you see an 8-pointed star, let it be a silent bell that wakes you up from the trance of the cycle. Remember that you are the master of your own destiny and the gardener of your own time. You do not need to wait for a permission slip from the world to step into your sovereignty. The 8th day is not a date on a calendar that you have to reach. It is a state of being that you choose to embody. It is the quiet confidence of the one who knows they are both a creature of the earth and a child of the infinite. Walk forward with the awareness that the old agreements have been dissolved. The clay of your life is wet, the stars are in your hands, and the loop has finally been stopped. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the deep language of the soul. If this exploration of the Seal of Melchizedek has resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. By doing so, you help the algorithm carry these ancient whispers to others who are searching for their own exit from the loop. This is Symbols and Synchronicity, and we are grateful for your presence in this circle. Until we meet again, stay sovereign, stay expansive, and keep looking for the signs.